All right, welcome to another Storage Authority webinar. We're going live on the second Thursday of every month. So be sure to save the date. The next one's going to be April 10th. The real estate world knows it as location, location, location. We're kind of changing it up in location, location, storage. So we're going to be sharing some tips and secrets on, how to really choose a winning site. And for the first time ever, we're actually going to be sharing some of our, secrets when it comes to emotional data. So definitely be on the lookout for that. Quick intro. We got Josh Parker, our tech and operations director, with us. We got Mark Gooden, civil engineer by trade. He's been helping owners design, build, get into self-storage for over 30 years.
Welcome,
And
everybody.
awesome. And myself, Garrett Bird, VP here at Storage Authority. And I've been in real estate and self-storage, going on 22 years myself. So a lot of information we'll be sharing with you guys. All right, quick shout out to our sponsors. These are some of our industry leaders. And if you want any introduction to, any of our sponsors, please reach out to me and I'll be glad to do that. We have from lending to data, even if you want to use your retirement funds and deploy that into your self-storage, I can introduce you to Diane over there at Tenant. So just let me know. All right, so as we're getting into why site selection matters, no longer are the days of build it and they will come. And I get calls all the time with, hey, I have a site and I'd love to put self-storage on it, and there's 900 people around it in a 3 mile radius, or I found an excellent 6 acres for 200K and drive-by traffic, 200 cars a day. So you really gotta, be strategic on finding your site, and we're going to share the low-hanging fruit. Obviously, is your population and your drive-by traffic. But we're also going to get into what I touched on, some of that emotional data and what goes into, that thought process. So, good pivot as we get into demographics. I'm going to ship it over to Mark here.
Thanks, Garrett. The first one you see here on demographic is apps. I don't know if you've noticed it, but the new rage is data, and so, I think new applications are coming up with that data, bi-monthly. I don't know if you've noticed, but they're making a lot of money off of us promoting that data. 10 years ago, this data wasn't available like it is, and we found better sites faster. Because this data is at our fingertips, half the time we don't even understand the value of population or income or these things, or how to use that data correctly. We waste a lot of time on data. I deal with a lot of franchise. Oh, what's the income range I need? And, how about this or that? Let's get back to the emotional data. So when you think demographics, I want you to think emotional data acquired by you, not acquired by the apps. And the way you have to acquire this is actually go out and visit your site and get real emotional data. You want to go to the site at night. Take a look at that site. That site's going to tell you all about the population and income. As you drove to that site, did you feel safe? Did your spouse feel safe? Or were the houses, such a neighborhood where they were much run down and everything, and you didn't feel safe? That's the best way to tell you about income and will that site work, not looking at a graph of, did they make 20,000, 40,000, 60,000? It's going to tell you so much more. It's going to tell you about, the apartments. People ask me all the time, do I want to rent where there's more apartments or where there's more residential? It doesn't make a huge difference. And people don't even understand why, we like apartments and self-storage. People think we like apartments and self-storage because apartment owners have less space. That's not the real reason. You know what? You can check the data out. The reason we like apartments is people move more with apartments. So you go back to the population. the larger the population, the more apartments there are per person. You could be in a small town of 8, 9,000 square feet, 8, 9,000 people, and there's no apartments in a lot of these rural towns. So you got to look at all the different data from an emotional perspective, and you'll learn quite a bit. Um, let's take a look at the traffic. Instead of, what does 20,000 cars mean or 10,000 cars mean? I can tell you an A, B, and C. If you go there between 4 and 5 o'clock and you pull into, say, a commercial business right down the street, and your car is ready to pull out. If you can pull out pretty much without thinking, you got a C or a D traffic site. There's not enough traffic. If you can pull out anytime you want. Now, if you have to wait a little bit, if you have to wait a little bit between 4 and 5, that's the peak hour. Well, then you've got a B site. But if your mind says to yourself, man, I've got to wait here for the traffic at peak hour, I've got to look both ways, and your mind is actually acknowledging the traffic. That's an A site. You got 20,000 cars per day. Now, if you got that with 2 lanes, you're great. But if you got 4 lanes, you got that you got 40,000 because you got that on both sides of the traffic, if it's a right in or right out. So you're going to learn so much more by driving to that site than and spending that time looking at the demographics. Um, let's take population. People ask me all the time about population. Should I build here or build there? But you know what? State by state, the population growth is pretty much the same throughout most of the state. Up north, the population growth is -1%. In Florida, it's plus 2 or 3%. But I'll tell you what, any day of the week, think emotional data again. Any day of the week, I would build in my hometown with negative population growth than build 3 states over with positive population growth. Being there, you're going to do a better job. Being there is going to help your manager do a better job. So that is critical as well. You see the pro tip there. Sometimes people don't realize that if it works in the 1 or 2 mile radius and it doesn't work in the 3 mile radius, it works. It's even better if it works in the 1 and 2 mile radius and it doesn't work in the 3, 4, and 5. But if you have to take the 5, 6, and 7 mile populations, it's in our book, it does not work. It's going to take forever to rent up. I want to tell you one story before we move off to the next slide. I learned about emotional data when I designed the first Walmart in the state of Connecticut back in the 80s. One of the Walmart brothers flew in the morning to our little teeny airport, drove around town, no feasibility studies, no nothing. The next day, he approved the site, and we started the design of that site. And Walmart to this day continues to use emotional data. Think about this: Walmart and Kmart opened the same year, 1962. Kmart was smart enough. They gathered all the data, they put it on spreadsheets one after another, and they had the data to go to the banks. And they got millions of dollars, and before you knew it, they were ahead, 250 facilities to 7 facilities. But fast forward today, every one of us can tell you who the founder of Walmart is. Nobody can tell us who the founder of Kmart is, and Kmart is defunct because they didn't take consideration the emotional data. This is my favorite part, of course. Now the 4 Walton kids, they're all worth over 50 billion, and 3 of them are worth well over 100 million. But one of them is only worth 50 billion. I can imagine when they get together for Thanksgiving, they say to, I think his name is Lucas, hey Lucas, you want us to help you out there? You're kind of slumming it at $50 billion. And to push this even further, the Walmart family is the richest family in the entire world. They would, if Sam Walton was alive today, he'd be miles ahead of Elon Musk. It's just now it's been spread from family member to family member to family. It's in the third generations. So it is important to keep that going. So Garrett, I'll leave it here and on to the next slide.
Yep. Yeah, one thing I want to add that you mentioned about apartments, Mark, being in the demographics or whatnot, the big thing that we love about apartments is, that's a business alliance. And, some of the emotional data you talked about, they're your business alliance. First time you visit them, you're helping them overcome objections by if someone's downsizing, bring them a bottle of wine, you'll be their business alliance, forever. And then every time you visit them every quarter, make sure you're bringing them something. But it's a great referral basis. So, I love apartments for that reason. All right, getting into visibility and accessibility. The number one driver in self-storage is always going to be convenience. They're either driving by your facility, searching in Google or search engine, self-storage near me. Most of your customers are gonna, come from a 3 mile radius, depending on the density. It's just they want to be close to their belongings. So, you got to think easy access. You got to think convenience. You want to make sure you have a beautiful, well-lit sign. And at dark, you also want to have a well-lit facility, like a football stadium. That's just security. A fun fact here, one of the number one reasons customers choose gas stations after dark is lighting. Prices is out the window. They just want, good lighting and to feel safe. A good number you want to write down here is 125 feet. And what that is the frontage, the minimum frontage you really want for your facility. And breaking that down is, 25 feet each side. You got your 30-foot drive and then a 45-foot climate control building. So you're visible, you don't have to have all the gold frontage, but, at least 125 feet there where customers are driving by you, you're getting in their memory folder, so when they need your service, it's there for you. Going back to the pro tip right here, just thinking grocery store and retail, you want to be, at front and center, but, you don't have to have the huge perfect square. And I'll share a story with you as well of one of our owners. He actually lived in New Jersey, but he was looking in Florida, and we found a site in Kissimmee, Florida. 17 acres. Negotiated him to carve out 7 acres. Got it for under $1 million, but he got some of that gold frontage just as much as we needed. So it came out, and it's a beautiful site. Well, he's going to be starting construction, but a beautiful location. And he'll be starting construction here in the next couple months or so. We're excited for him there in Kissimmee. All right, Josh, I'll throw it to you.
All right, assessing the competition. So when you're looking at your competition, you've really got to take a step back before you look at the competition and look at yourself. You've got to look at what your goals are for your facility in terms of size, rates, features. You're going to have an on-site manager, remote manager. Once you kind of know what it is you're going to come to market with, then you can start looking at your competition. And when you're looking at the competition, you're really looking to see, is this my competition or not? Because you've got to be comparing apples to apples. There are at least 3 facilities close by to the facilities that I oversee here in Connecticut that I don't consider to be my competition for one reason or another. Either they're so run down, or they're poorly managed, they're at capacity with rates that are, bottom level, basement rates, haven't been raised in years, whatever the case may be. They're not my competition. I've got to be looking at the facilities that are, similar to mine and figuring out, what they have. that I'm offering. And if I don't know what I'm coming to market with, I don't know who to compare to. So look at yourself first. Then you've got to we use at Storage Authority a checklist, and it's a competition review worksheet. And this isn't just a simple little checklist. It's 4 pages. So what you want to be doing is doing a comprehensive, in-depth, review of your competition. And you're looking at everything from the basics, unit sizes. You're looking at, visibility and cleanliness. And you've got to get down to the specifics. You got to start with the basics. You've got to get down to the specifics. It's not just is this facility clean? Yes or no. It's how clean is the office? How clean is the parking lot? How clean is all the units that you look at. You're going to do a staff review. We have 10 questions just on that first initial conversation with the staff there. A lot of people just are going to focus on the rates. That's what most people are going to focus on. But there's so much more to it than just the rate. Are you getting your rates online? Because if you're just getting it online, you're probably getting the teaser rates. Like in Mark's unit down there in Florida, that unit price might get jacked up in 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. So if you're in there talking to the manager, you can get a lot more information. We have down there the pro tip, $1.60 a square foot, but that $1.60 a square foot, we're talking about more than just the rental rate. We're including, all of the revenue, the admin fees, the late fees, the insurance or protection plans, the merchandising, the locks. You can't get that information from just, kind of hopping onto their website or maybe even over the phone. But if you go into the store and you talk to the manager, you can get that information out of them. Hey, when am I going to get a rate increase? What are the late fees like? What are the add-on, the admin fees? And you can get all that information and get a much better view of your competition's actual rates. And you can't afford to too quickly rule out a location because you saw some rates that scared you, maybe online. You really have to do this deep dive, closer look. And usually you've got to do it in person. Now, more important than all of that, getting back to what Mark was talking about earlier, is that emotional data. And this is probably the most important thing of all when you're assessing your competition. And that's, how did you feel when you called them on the phone, when you visited their website, when you drove by the facility, pulled in the parking lot, walked into the office, all these things, when you toured the site to look at a unit? How did you feel? Did you feel safe, comfortable? This is kind of silly, but would you feel comfortable walking around the office barefoot? Okay. Because I can tell you, in a Storage Authority office, you'd be just fine. That's how clean they are. But there are plenty of offices that I've walked into. There's no way I would ever walk around barefoot, right? But, without taking into account anything that a manager says, you should be able to tell if a facility is an A+ or a D-. And it's all about that feeling that you get. So how your competition makes their customers feel and makes you feel when you visit is incredibly valuable information in assessing your competition. So you can know, kind of where they're at, and is this really a competitor? And what do I have to do if I come into this market to outperform them? Read their reviews. You're going to learn a ton about their customers and how their customers feel by reading their reviews. It's going to give you a ton of information. Look right here at these 2 pictures on the screen here. The top one, I think you should be pretty obvious which one is the A+ facility and which one is the D-, right? So this top one is a Storage Authority location from Mulberry, Florida. It's big, high ceilings. It's bright. It's inviting. Look at those polished floors. They just look fantastic. And then compare that to the bottom picture, and we've got a dumpster that's overflowing. And what's worse is that it's right at the front when the customer walks in. So in one facility, they're walking past this overflowing dumpster to get in the facility. And then the top facility, they're walking into this bright, big office. which one do you think, the customer is going to feel better at? I know which one, I would choose and where I would rather be. That's emotional data. So at Storage Authority, we don't have a dumpster out front. We've got a small dumpster that we empty twice a month. We stick it inside of a unit with all of our landscaping tools and stuff, so it's out of sight. And customers don't see it and they don't smell it. That is emotional data. So collecting that information on your competition is just gonna, it's gonna do wonders for you. I want everyone to go to our website, after this, storageauthorityfranchise.com. Scroll down a little bit, and you're gonna see a video from our Monmouth Road, New Jersey site. And this video is packed with emotional data. And it's what we've figured out from years of learning and studying our customers. But you're going to see a lot of things in that video. Our facilities, we put out American flags and big red, white, and blue banners down our decorative fencing in the front. Or we put out hundreds of small, little, 6-inch flags all down our driveway and across the road frontage. And we do that for all the patriotic holidays, 4th of July, Memorial Day, Labor Day, all those, Veterans Day. And it just makes people feel good. Everyone driving by sees all that, patriotic red, white, and blue flags, they get excited about it. We've got these nice bright offices at all of our facilities. You're going to see in that video, you'll see a video of the snack bar and the coffee station. And right above it, big, bold letters, may all who enter as guests leave as friends. The signage, the brickwork, you're going to see it all on that video. But the point of it all is that, it gets people excited and they get that gut feeling, that just right feeling before they even walk in the door. I would take the second best site that's loaded with all this emotional data that gets people that just right feeling. I would take the second best site with all of that over the best site in the state that is lacking all of that emotional data, that's lacking that emotional response from customers. A winning site is going to evoke that emotional response from customers and give them that just right feeling. And that's what you're looking for.
Good stuff there, Josh. It's all about being the hometown self-storage. And me personally, I'd pay double if I'm comparing these two sites and where I want to rent, where I want to send my family. I'll pay double looking at our office there in Mulberry.
Absolutely.
All right, Mark, back to you on zoning.
All right, great. I want to say this. Zoning is easy. We're just talking to some guys from California where they said the zoning is hard. I'm going to tell you, zoning is easy. It's not a big deal that everyone makes it out to be. It's black and white. You buy the book or the ebook, you read it, and you follow it. Now, I can say that because I've designed over 1,000 site plans and never had a single one denied. But I can also tell you, at those commission meetings waiting for my turn, I've seen plenty of site plans denied, plenty of them. And one of the reasons they denied is they don't follow the basic zonings, the black and white. I don't know, they can't read, they're lazy, they're not paid enough, but you've got a set of zoning regulations, you do have to follow them, and you'll hear more about why when I get down to the last bulletin there. But let's talk about emotional zoning. You've got to get people on your side. You want to get in front of that planner multiple times before you go in front of that commission. He should know your name. When I was an engineer, I would talk with the planners and get all the information I need over and over. But at one point, I would tell them, I'm in a rush to get this approved, but I'm not in a rush to get on the commission. When I get on the commission, I would like to have a letter from you saying my plans meet the regulations. Not a letter that says, oh, we just need to correct these 4 things and then it will meet the regulations. Because if I go in front of the commission with that, they have the opportunity, says, look, he's missing these 4 things. I don't know if he can do it. They're going to put you to the next meeting anyways, or they're going to flat out deny you if they want. So make sure you meet all the regulations. And you've got that letter from the expert. And we'll tell you why in a second, why that's so important. But if you have a commission member that's on the fence and everything meets the regulation, it's their job to approve it. It's not their job to deny it. So when it comes to emotional zoning, just the layout of your site plan is critical. Some engineers have no idea about emotional zoning, and I can tell you that. I mean, when I was an engineer, we charged, everybody was charging $150 an hour. We were charging $300 an hour, for the engineer service, because they knew we understood emotional data and we got the job done. But just self-storage wise, if you got a property and you got a residential neighborhood on one side and woods on the other side, put the driveway on the side by the woods. Your engineer, he might not do that. He might just choose one side because it was convenient or easy. But those little things. If you got a neighborhood that's near you, your self-storage building should go parallel to that neighborhood, and the back of the building should be towards the neighbors, meaning there's no lights towards the neighbors, there's no driveway towards the neighbors, there's no traffic towards the neighbors, there's no noise towards the neighbors. And emotional zoning is when you present that, you explain how you took the neighbors into consideration. So it's important. Let's take let me talk. I just want to tell one story. I'm getting a little sidetracked here, but I want to tell you one of my favorite emotional zoning events that I'll remember for the rest of my life. A friend came to my engineering office, and he wanted to build self-storage on it. He had talked to the town, and the town said, it's zoned residential, and it's a residential neighborhood. So he can't build there. He brought the property to me, and I said, I'll take a look at it in the regulations, but the planner told you no. I know that town, they follow their regulations, but I'll take a look at it. So I looked at the regulations, and the regulations, sure enough, it didn't allow zoning in this residential zone. But I read every page of that zoning regulation, and there was one line in that zoning regulation that said, if you're an existing non-conforming use and you want to change it to another non-conforming use, not permitted use, it's okay. And Jamie had told me that this property was used as a gravel pit back in the 1940s. So I said, here's a regulation that, kind of says you could do this maybe, but, is a gravel pit and self-storage the same? The gravel pit, stopped 20 years ago. So, given this town, they're still not going to approve it. I told him, and he said, well, I really want to do it. I said, well, before you spend your money, before you spend your $30,000, here's how you have a chance. You've got 13 neighbors. Every single one of them needs to sign a petition saying they're in favor of your project. He says, I'll get them, Mark. Don't you worry about them. I'll get them. You start the design. He gave me a deposit, and we went to the planner. I said, we got to go to the planner and tell him we're doing this. We don't want to surprise him. That'll really make him upset. So we went and met the planner. We showed him this one regulation, and he says, no, the town is never going to approve that. Never. And I said, okay, but if I submit that, will you get it in front of the commission and let them, have their say? They can approve it or deny it, but I want to make sure the town planner didn't say it was so ridiculous. He says, of course, that's your right to be in front of the commission if you want to be. So now, at least we made friends with him. He wasn't, upset with me for springing that on him. We designed it and submitted it. And when we submitted it, we signed it with a petition of all 13 neighbors saying they're in front of it. What I didn't know is that Jamie delivered oil. He was in the oil business. He delivered oil to all these neighbors for 20 years, so he knew them well. So it came time for that public hearing that night, and we had it set up where six or seven of the neighbors came, and we had one strong neighbor, that wasn't afraid, and as soon as it says anybody favor or against, she got up and she said, I am so happy that they're proposing this. It's better than putting 10 or 15 homes back there. And you know what? I am sick and tired of all those motorcycles in that gravel pit every day and every night bothering us. And look at the great job that he's done for the neighborhood and the setbacks that he's used. And then 6 or 7 people got up right behind her and said, I'm for it for the same reasons. And lo and behold, they approved it. So you really got to think about, those type of things. So let's continue on here. Non-zoning regulations. Boy, that's a big one. People miss this and they get denied. One that we should all look at is, are there architectural standards? Sometimes we find that at the end. So at least we know what the costs might be, because if there's architectural regulations, you can imagine the cost of your self-storage is going to be another $200,000 to $500,000 if they got to have block and this and that and peaked roofs. So architectural regulations. Another one, if the town is looking to deny you, I've seen it before. They can look at their growth plan. Every town has a 10-year growth plan. It's written down. Sometimes it was written 25 years ago. Some of them, never open them. But we had the one that Garrett said in Kissimmee. They had a 10-year plan that said, this district we want to make this a financial district with roads 600 by 600, 800 by 800. They had a dimension for the road network and everything. It was never going to happen, but it's a dream that they had on their 10-year goal. We were aware of that. We designed our thing knowing that, they might ask for this road grid. And we did a lot of homework, showed them what we're doing. It wouldn't stop them, but in the meantime, it allowed us to build there. And sure enough, we got approvals, but down one side of our property, we had a 50-foot easement that if the town ever, or anybody ever wanted to build a road, they could build it in that easement. We'd give it to the town if it ever became necessary. So we stayed out of that easement. And that one got approval. Let's look at the next one, often overlooked zoning. This is very critical. I've seen too many people, read the zoning regulations, but not analyze them and use them. So I've got 6 things here that are often overlooked in zoning. And that is zoning regulations and self-storage regulations. Most of the time you have zone Z, commercial. And they have the regulations for all the use. They don't have separate regulations for retail and for doctors and for dentists. It's just one set of regulations. You're all going to have so much landscaping. You're all going to have this, different parking for different uses. Some towns, said, hey, we don't want self-storage as much, or we don't want ugly self-storage. So they made another set of regulations that are specifically for self-storage. So if you're an engineer, you've got to meet both. So don't forget to meet both. And one of the tough ones in self-storage regulations is parking. We only need 5 or 6 parking spaces, but a lot of them say, they follow the retail. You need 1 parking space per 1,000 square feet. So if you had a 60,000 square foot building, you need 60 parking spaces. That makes absolutely no sense. You got to go into them and say, okay, I'm going to put the 10 I need up front, but the rest are going to be unmarked in front of the doors. So look at that. Look at both zoning regulations. Number 2 is the parking regulations. Number 3 and 4 is building coverage and building coverage and driveway coverage. It's called impervious coverage in some regulations. And some regulations, there's not, and half of the regulations, there's no building or impervious coverage regulations. You just have to use the side yards, provide the landscaping and everything. Great. you know, 5 acres, you're going to build your 75,000 square feet self-storage. But if it's 25% impervious coverage, you need double the acreage. So look at the zoning regulations early on. You know, why go through the whole process of you know, doing your contract, paying your attorney $3,000, and then doing it later? You know these things so your engineer can take a look at it during the early on pre-contract thing. So, and then the last one is topography. You know, there's actually regulations in some towns that say, you know, we consider anything over 15% slopes as non-buildable. So you've got to subtract all that land out of your acreage before you do your impervious coverage, before you do these other calculations. So that's often a surprise that, you know, there's actually regulations about steep topography. So let's look quickly at the 3 types of zoning. Self-storage, it's zoned for self-storage, it's a special exception, or it's a zone change. Now, when it's zoned for self-storage, what that means is your site plan meets the regulations, and then either the town staff review it and they can approve it. It doesn't usually happen that way. What it usually is the town staff make sure it's correct, meets the regulations, and then it goes in front of the commission to vote on it to make sure it meets the regulations. So in other words, you really should never get denied if it's zoned for self-storage. Now, a special exception, that means same regulations, but it's very, very clear that the commission, not the staff, but the staff can review and give their comments, but the commission has to make sure whatever you're proposing is in harmony, really in harmony with the neighborhood. If the neighborhood has, you know, X amount of feet from all the buildings from the side yard can be 25 feet, they can make it 50 feet. If the neighborhood is all brick and block, they can make your self-storage brick and block. So a special exception, you know, I've done hundreds of them, and they've all been approved. But yeah, you better go that extra mile. And then a zone change. The zone change is also like a regulation change or a variance. They're the hardest to get. And really, if you look at them, they're all illegal. You know, they're all illegal, and that's why they have these names on them. And the sense what they're going to ask you if you go in for a variance, right on the form it says, what is your hardship? And the hardship can't be, I want more self-storage. Oh, the land is so steep. You know, you can't blame the land. You can't blame what you want to do. So there really is tough hardships to do that. In zone change, you can't in the middle of residential put a zone change your property. That's called spot zoning. It's illegal. So you have to go back to the emotional data of the hardship. So it can't be your hardship. You got to make it about the neighbor's hardship. So if it was residential and then it became commercial, and maybe it was commercial one doesn't allow self-storage, but in commercial one it allows retail plazas. So somebody right next to the residential could go in and build a commercial plaza. It could have a restaurant that smells. It's going to have a lot of traffic. It's going to have 6 or 7 dumpsters in the back. You know how you drive behind and all that trash. So you go in there with the zone change and you want to, or a reg change, and you want to, you know, C1, well, you're going to make it C2 and call that the transition between residential and commercial, where you're going to put a self-storage in there that's going to have no traffic, no smell, no impact on the neighborhood. But I've seen people go in with those and they'll still deny it because they don't take it far enough. So, you know, you got one shot deal. Don't think you're coming back when you go in front of the commissions. Give it your best shot first. So if you're doing one of those things, or if you're in for a special exception, you know, or a zone change, submit a plan. Don't make them trust you that you're going to do a good job. Spend the 20 grand. If you're not willing to spend the 20 grand and lose it, don't go for a zone change, because if you submit a plan that shows the front of that, how it's going to be block, it's going to be glass, it's going to look like retail. I mean, if you went back to the slide that Garrett was showing before, the facility had a beautiful look to it. So, make it about the neighborhood and not about your needs when it comes to hardship and being in harmony and think about those things because it's going to make a big difference. All right, I'll pass that on to the next slide. Let's go to the next slide, Garrett.
All right, real quick, Mark, I run a lot of the discovery calls with individuals that want to get into self-storage. And, one of the top questions I always get is how many acres do I need to build self-storage? So it's a good transition, into our next slide here.
And you look at this slide here, it's pretty clear how much acreage you need. It's simple. As long as you understand there's exceptions to every rule, every guideline. So if you have 5 acres and you multiply it times 15,000, you can build 75,000 square feet, unless they have that regulation about impervious coverage, unless these are that or that. So the real hard part on acreage is determining usable land. And I'm going to give you 7 things to help you determine usable land, and some of them are going to surprise you. One, a simple one, you got 5 acres. If you got a 300-foot easement from the Helco right away, you don't have 5 acres. And if you walk the site, Josh said visit the site. I'm going to also say walk the property because at the early stage you can see wetlands sometimes. You can see brooks. You can see those overhead utilities. So walk the property when you visit. Take an app with you that shows you where the property is. If you need that, Josh will get you that app. It's free. And you can walk a property to show you the property lines and make sure you know where you're on the property. But so you got to minus easements. That's one. The second one is you got to minus wetlands. They don't let us build in wetlands these days. But here's the emotional side of it to realize is, some towns care about their wetlands so much, they have a 150-foot buffer. And boy, you're going to be hard pressed to build in that. And the other towns have a 0-foot buffer. It doesn't even have to go to the commission, the wetlands commission, unless it's in the wetlands. And the other one is, it doesn't matter if you got wetlands on your site or the neighboring properties, you got to go, and they've got that 150-foot buffer. So wetlands is number 2. Number 3 is that steep slopes. Even 10% slopes on self-storage, 10% means in 100 feet, it dropped 10 feet. In 200 feet, it dropped 20 feet. You're building a flat platform. You can't have grades that big. It's going to, cost you an extra $500,000 to build on that site because the topography is so steep. Another usable land thing is the soils themselves. You need that feasibility study done early on, because if there's ledge and you got to blast ledge, you're not going to buy that property. We've seen soils that you could stick a pencil through them and it down 180 feet because the soils are so soft you can't put a foundation in, or that foundation is going to cost you an extra $500,000 or $250,000. So soil testing, geotech. The next one is endangered species. And don't ask me why engineers check this at the end of the project. It's so easy to check. You go to DEP and they have maps with circles on them. And if your property is not in one of those circles, you don't have to do anything about endangered species. If your property falls in one of those circles, you have to send an expert out to your site to see if the endangered species is there. Now, don't worry if you're in that circle. It doesn't mean that there's an endangered species. What they do when it comes to endangered species, the endangered species is not in the center of that circle. Sometimes it's on the edge. Sometimes it's over here. It's over here in that 3-mile circle, because they don't want to let people know where that endangered species is. So sometimes it's some kind of box turtle that lives in a swamp. Well, you could be downhill from that swamp and good land and there's no endangered species. So have your guys check that out, your engineer. It's a 15-minute task to check that out, unless you have to hire somebody to go out and look at the property. Odd shape. 5 acres means it's rectangle shape. It's not all these 3 triangle properties. And here is the another one is the frontage. That Garrett pointed out. You want enough frontage. Here's a picture of the same thing that Garrett pointed out. It had enough frontage where you could build. We actually put the office, the first two buildings. So the office was not all the way up at the street, could be seen by the drive-by, but it didn't bother that one neighbor. And you might not notice it here also, but from the neighbors to the north or up, we left a 150-foot buffer because it was like a 2-to-1 slope of gravel anyways. But stuff we presented out to the commission. So, but the last one, I want to write down, and I want everybody to write this down in usable land. Land for the neighbors. Land for the neighbors. Nobody even thinks about that. But, I'll tell you one story. My best friend from high school, he's also an engineer. He was doing a project. He worked at a different firm from me. And it was actually a project for himself. And it was on the line for a lot of these zoning regulations. And one of the neighbors was residential, and he came and he complained about all these things. And the commission decided to say, we're gonna keep this public hearing open. Let's think about this. Everybody's fighting tonight. It's a tough one. We'll come back next month and see what we could figure out. But my friend George, he gave me a call. He says, "Look, can I come over and show you this? I feel we're going to get denied." It was like an 8-lot subdivision, or we're going to lose 2 lots. And those lots, they were large acreage, so they're worth about $150,000 a lot back then in Connecticut. So he came to me. I said, "What have you done for the neighbors?" "Oh, we put in a 10-foot buffer along his property that we're going to plant landscaping in." I said, "Come on, George, what are you going to do? Chop down the trees and put in a buffer? Go check with your wife and see what she would say. She would say the same thing as your neighbor." So I said, "Give him 50 feet. Give him 50 feet. It's not going to change anything. You don't lose a lot. It's not going to disturb you." He was so against it. "That's not right. This is America. Why do I have to give him 50 feet? I said, "Give him 50 feet or denied." So I said, more importantly, emotional data, they're all from the same town. Give him a call up. His name will come to me in a minute. Give him a call up and say, "My wife came up with the perfect solution to our concerns here. Your concerns, our concerns. Can I stop by for a cup of coffee?" He went to the guy's house for a cup of coffee. And he says, he went in there and said, "I don't know why I didn't think of this, but we're going to give you 50 feet. We're not going to chop any trees down on that 50 feet. It's yours. You can do whatever you want, build. It's yours. We're just going to give it to you. No conservation easement. We're going to give it to you." The guy was amazed. "You're going to give me land?" It was like 50 by 700 feet. "Yeah, we're going to give it to you. You deserve that. My wife says you deserve it. And the more I think about it, why not?" The next meeting was all approved because the guy wrote a letter. "I'm in favor of the project." He didn't show up, but he wrote a letter. "I'm in favor of the project. Then George is going to give me 50 feet of land," and the map showed it. "This land to be transferred to so-and-so upon approval." So, usable land is a key. And we actually tell our franchisees to go out and look for 6 acres. It's very rare that 5 acres, all of it's usable. You don't know. If you have land on a corner and it has 2 streets, you lose usable land because usually the front yard's the biggest. So maybe it would have been a side yard with 15-foot setback, but now because it's on 2 streets, you got 2 front yards with 75-foot setbacks. So you do have to take a look at these things. So it's simple, but even in the pro tips, detention is so we don't flood out the neighbors. But sometimes in really, really dense areas, the detention was done for the whole neighborhood, the whole commercial district. So you don't have to put detention in. So you get an extra half acre. Sometimes there's no sewer, so you got to put in a septic system, you lose a half acre. So, and that's one of the reasons we look for 5 acres. You can even do multi-story. Garrett did a multi-story in his tenure. I think it was on an acre, acre and a half.
Yeah, acre.
Yep. So, but to get the parking lot, half of the first floor you could drive underneath it. They had to eliminate some of the first floor building so there was room for the parking lot. So you get down to an acre, it gets tougher. And some people like to do 3.5 acres and do a combination of single story and multi-story. So there's always a lot of options out there. And you might not know those options. Give me a call. Whether you're a franchise or not. That's what we're in. We're in the solving problem business. And before I pass it along, I'll just tell you one thing that's not on the slide deck or part of this, but you got to decide when you're looking for land, is this going to work? And you got to know why you can charge more. And most self-storages are in the service business. They're in the service business. They're in the business of providing great customer service. So your neighbors at best are providing great customer service. And you might think, well, geez, that's pretty good, right? No, that's terrible. Because if you're in the hospitality business, you're going to kick butt. Now, most people don't even know what the hospitality business means. But what that means is that for your clients, you're creating you're creating an event. You're creating a feeling. You're creating memories. And memories, you can have self-storage memories like I was never treated like that, and you tell your friends. So you're creating a feeling in the hospitality business that's much stronger than you are in the customer service business. Side note, I know we're running out, so let's get to the next slide real quick here, Garrett.
Yep. This next one, Mark, obviously this used to be the Bible. How we choose sites is demand and square foot per person or capita, however you look at it. But this will be good for you and your decades experience to weigh in on and, really see how square foot per capita or per person's evolved over the, last 10, 15 years.
Well, and I'm going to rush through this. Any questions, certainly ask me, but I really want to rush through this. First I would like to say that square feet of self-storage per person is not demand. You should not be using that for demand. We've all of a sudden decided to use that because once again, it's a lazy way out, but it's just simply not reliable. And people happen to use 8 square feet of self-storage per person as equilibrium. If you're at 8, you're just right. If you're at 7 square feet, you need some more. If you're at 9 square feet, you got too much self-storage. But I can tell you this from a fact. I've looked at self-storages at 4 square feet, 8 square feet, and 12 square feet. And naturally you'd think, hey, this one that has 4 square feet of self-storage per person is the best one. Not true. I've seen plenty at 12 that were much better than the on the other side of town at 4 and 8 square feet. The best way to review demand is to visit your competition. Okay. 4 ways. What is their rental rates? Because your goal is really to fill up at premium rates swiftly. So what are their office rates are? How full are they? How long have they been open? Make sure you get that one. How long have they been open? If they've been open 3 years, great. Their occupancy is their occupancy, but less than 3 years, it could be growing. How long is the rental rate good for? You have to get good at wording these, talking to the managers, getting these analysis, because that is what's going to make the difference. what happens is, and I can, you can't use internet rates for your feasibility study. Most of them are not going to pan out. You've got to go there and get the real rates. Sometimes if you go to the internet, you can find out how full they are because it'll say one left, none left, call. So you can go to the internet to see how full, but not to get the rates per se. But and I was telling a story before we got online. I had to rent self-storage last October for the first time in my life because my house was flooded out because of the Milton storm. So, Garrett helped me get a 10 by 10. $65 because we had to drive 35 minutes out of town because all the self-storages in Sarasota were either so bad my wife would never go near them or they were full. We found this beautiful one. It was just built apparently because, Garrett and I were looking, not too many locks on it. $65. I mean, we just couldn't believe it. Garrett couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. 2 months later, I got a notice on my phone. It's $135. Let me explain what the REITs have done. 7 years ago, the REITs would raise people's rents once a year, $29. And we thought that was crazy. The rest of us in the industry thought that was crazy because you raise somebody's rent $29, they're going to move out. And what the REITs have figured out is people are never going to move out. They are never going to move out because of price. Because, mine went from 65 to 135 in 2 months. What's that? A $70 increase. But the REITs, we've done this in other areas where we're going to get a bank loan. Where we had to prove to the bank what the real rates are. We've seen REITs increase their thing now $90 in 2 months and then increase it again. So they put these unconditionally meaningless rental rates online. So, you can't use those. Growth, I might have said this before, but, I don't care about growth. I want to be close to home. And pretty much close to home is, maybe it's a half an hour around your house, an hour. They're all going to have the same growth pretty much. One town doesn't grow that much more than another to make a difference. And the feasibility studies don't include growth. So you're better off being close to home with the growth that actually exists. Now, I want to give one last story here, and I'm quickly done. And it's not so much a story, but I'm going to give you 2 sites, and I want you to think which site you would choose. So site number 1 has 80,000 people in a 3-mile radius and no competition. No competition. There's no self-storages in the 3-mile radius. So if I multiply that times 8 square feet, that means I can have a 64,000 net rentable self-storage. Sounds pretty good, right? All right, now I'm going to tell you about site 2. Site 2 has 80,000 people in the 3-mile radius. It has an existing 8 square feet per person, 10 facilities for 640,000 existing square feet of self-storage. So the demand is 0. Using 8 square feet per person, the demand is 0. Which one would you choose? Josh, which one would you choose? The one that has 0 demand or the one that has 64,000 demand?
All the demand.
Yeah, no, but Garrett, which one would you choose? This is a trick question. Would you choose site 2 with 0 demand at 8 square feet or site 1 at 8,000?
Yeah, 8,000 will take you 10 years to lease up. I want the 80,000 people.
But here's the math behind it. It shouldn't be a guess. Here's the math. All right, I'm going to pick a number. Let's say the population, there's only so many people from a population that's going to use self-storage in that given year, move into a self-storage. Let's say it's 2%. 8,000 people, 2% move into self-storage that year. 2% times 8,000 is 160 units rented. not bad. You're probably going to fill up in 3 years. You know, you're going to have a little bit. You're going to have a longer rent up period, but you're going to get 160 units all to yourself. They're all going to rent there because you're the guy in town. But site two is 80,000 people. You multiply that times 2%. That gives you 1,600 new renters. Now, first you got to remember in self-storage, 50% are not competition. They were built before the year 2000, 50%. They're old, they're crap. You know, nobody wants to rent there, you know, unless you're one of those 10% of the population. And then the other 50% have no sales and marketing plan. No sales and marketing plan. So I'd much rather have number two, and it's clear, the math is clear. You know, there's 1,600 people renting, 1,600 units. You should be able to, with a sales and marketing plan, and if you're in the hospitality plan where you know, business, you are going to rent a lot more than 160 self-storage units at premium prices. So, you know, population is, you know, we spend so much time on population, it's not cut and dry. So, you know, it's got to be, you know, it's back to that emotional data. You've got to understand how all this data works. And without that, or we've had franchisees who don't believe in it, it takes a longer, much longer to find it. And you're going to pass on some very good sites because everybody's trying to put this in a white and black box because we don't have time to do it ourselves. You have to do it yourselves. You need a team. It takes 3 things to do self-storage, you know, because you can't do it by your own anymore. You need partners, engineers, architects, owners, reps, maybe a financial partners. You need mentorship by somebody that has built own self-storage, and then you need deal flow. So, you know, and that's what Storage Authority does, those 3 things. You can do them on your own, but it's hard to do. You know, it's just that commitment of time. So with that, Garrett, we're getting close to our time limit, so I'm gonna pass it up and let Josh do the last big slide.
Yep, good stuff, Mark. Yeah, so the next slide we're gonna hit, you know, a lot of those that are looking for land, they don't think about it. The math might check out demand, you know, population, but they don't think about, which is big, security and safety. So I'll let Josh weigh in on this one.
Yeah, and I won't talk too much, but you know, number one reason people rent is because it's close to home. That's what the data, you know, shows. But the second reason, the number 2 reason is for that safety and security. And you know, I'll never say, for liability, you know, reasons, I'll never say that you know, we are safe and secure. My managers will never say, oh yeah, we are safe and secure. They'll never say that it's a liability, because here's the reality. Safety and security is emotional data. Safety and security is a feeling. You know, my dad growing up, my dad always said, oh, you know, locks only keep out honest people. Right. And that's true. You know, your site is safe and secure until the bad guy comes in and decides he wants to break in. Right. That's the reality. Safety and security is an emotional data. And, you know, we're not just talking about the address of the facility. I think Mark mentioned it earlier, but it's about that neighborhood you drive through when you get there. How does it feel? Does it feel safe? Is it dark when you get to the driveway? Here's one thing we've learned from many customers' feedback. Put a light out at the entrance. Okay, your engineer's not going to design it that way. And it might even sound, you know, silly to them, but what we've learned is that it's important to our customers. So, you know, putting that one extra light out, you know, at the entrance of the facility, it just feels better. It's, you know, signage that's going to put a smile on their face. So, you know, when we put up a sign for our security cameras, guess what? We don't put a sign that says under video surveillance. Okay, that sounds like a jail, right? We put out a sign with a big goofy smiley face on it that says smile for our cameras. You know, big screens in the office that, you know, they're just up on the wall. So we don't, you know, customer comes in, we don't say, oh, we've got, you know, 36 cameras, blah, blah, blah. We don't need to say it. There's big screens on the wall right behind our manager. And one screen shows one of the security cameras that shows them. They can see themselves on the screen. The other screen shows all those other 24 other cameras, views. All this information is being told to the customer without being told to the customer. It's that feeling they get when they come in the office. They can feel safe and secure. They see the big, beautiful gate when they pull in. You should never have to say how great you are. If you have to say it, you are lacking emotional data. So, I'm a confident guy. I didn't grow up in nice neighborhoods. Okay, I don't scare easily. There's a facility not too far from my house. I would not go there after dark. Okay, I would never send my kids there. I would never send my wife there alone, not even during the day. If you want to demand premium pricing and you want to find a location and build a site where you're going to be able to demand those premium, rates, it needs to be a place that feels premium, that feels safe and secure. You have to create, that site that gives people that feeling of, I'm okay here. I'm comfortable here. You're curating an experience, either excellent, good, average, or bad. It's up to you, but it is intentional with that focus on emotional data. And that's all safety and security is. I can pretty much guarantee, if you do it intentionally and you're smart about it, what kind of site you want to build and what kind of feeling of safety and security you want for your customers.
Good stuff, Josh. Number one, convenience. Number two, security. So memory bank that. All right, we covered a lot of ground. I know we're going to be wrapping it up here and opening it up to the Q&A here shortly, but the big thing, verify. You got a lot of good tips on, the general low-hanging fruit, but hopefully some of that emotional data we shared with you too. But any takeaways, you gotta have the right team. Whether you join Storage Authority, we're not promoting that right now, but you need a solid team to get you from A to Z. You want to be able to accomplish having a beautiful facility. Developing's a chore to get through. It could be a $500,000, $1 million loss, getting through development with the wrong team. So keep that in mind. If you have the capital to deploy, you want to have the right team on your side when you get through the whole process. And with that, we are going to open it up to Q&A. So, if you want to throw your question in the chat, we'll love to get to it. If you want to unmute and just ask your question verbally, definitely do that as well. Seeing back if there was a couple good questions that I think we got to during the chat as we were going. Yeah, Ben, thanks for sharing that. Mark, I don't know if you saw that in the chat, but he rented a 5x7 for $86. 10 months later, it was $186.
A new record, $100 increase.
I'm surprised it wasn't in 4 months. And that's the thing with these REITs, the web rates are essentially teaser rates now, and you can't really pencil your project if you're just looking at those web rates. It's unfortunately just not. It's not a way that it's not transparent to the customer, and that's why we really push having that 1-year price guarantee. Sure, we'll be higher than the guys down the road, but they love that transparency with us. Let's see, Carlin just asked, what do the numbers look like from investment perspective?
Garrett, let me answer that one. Real estate has always been the #1 investment in the United States. Makes more people millionaires than any other business. And what we have found is that the real estate self-storage is a real estate business. It actually has the highest rate of returns that of any real estate business. It has the lowest bank failures. So it's the best. It's not simple. It's not get rich quick. You have to put time in. You have to have some money to build a large facility if you're looking for a retirement income that's twice as what you made. You know, we're a franchisor. We're not supposed to project. We're not supposed to project income and everything. But if you go online, you know, I see people advertising their returns anywhere from 18 to 36% returns. But I look at it as infinity returns. You know, if you know, if one of our franchisees puts in $1 million and develops this, and you know, when they refinance 3 to 5 years out when they're full, you know, they take that $1 million out and sometimes double. So they got no money in there at all, and they're making a good six-figure income. So, you know, I would suggest you take a look at, you know, the MSM magazine or the ISS self-storage magazines. They're both great magazines out there, and find articles on it that can give you different perspectives on it. But again, it's you know, it's just been proven to be the number one real estate business, and your return depends on a lot of things. The great thing about it is self-storage allows other people's money. So with self-storage, you can borrow 85% and put down 15% with an SBA loan. So you're getting returns on your million, let's say, but you're also getting returns on the other that you built with other people's money. And then, you know, real estate is appreciation, depreciation, amortization. All those things are tax advantages that allow you to keep more of your income, and sometimes all of it because of depreciation. So, you know, that's a short answer, but again, if you want more, my phone number is somewhere, my email's in the chat there, Garrett. Josh, maybe you can put it in again so it's up front on the chat.
Yeah, we had another question from Ben that came in, Mark. So it says, as someone that will be needing investors to make this happen, should I be looking for land first or gaining interest from the investors first?
Well, there's two ways of thinking about it. If you're looking to have an investor who's a friend, I would ask all my friends and acquaintances, people I knew, I'd ask them right now, hey, you want to get in the self-storage business with you? Here's my simple game plan. If it's a yes, we'll sit down and talk about it. But you know, we have several franchisees that will partner up with somebody else. You know, they don't have the time to go out and look for land, but they're not going to necessarily partner up until you've got a piece of property. But the only thing you got to be aware of, once you find that property, you've got to put down, you know, 20%. Maybe you get a year of time, or six months to a year option time to get it designed and approved, and you can find a partner there. You know, we can help you find a partner. Garrett, put Garrett's information. You know, if you know, if you want to be on our list, we're actually starting a partnership program in the very near future, but Garrett's in charge of that. Make sure your name and your phone number and how much you have to invest, and you know, will you spend the time to find the land?
Let's see. I'm not seeing. There's another question that just came in from Carlin. What is the typical loan length for a self-storage loan, say for conventional and SBA backed?
About 25 years.
Hmm.
You know, you can get 25 years in a traditional loan. You get 25-year amortization, but commercial loans in the United States are typically either 5, 7, or 10 years for all commercial businesses. You don't get a 25-year loan. But you know, most people finance out of their SBA loan in 3 years after they own it, because they can get a lower interest rates. So you know, your SBA loan might be a 25-year amortization, but my guess is you probably have it 3 or 4 years before you finance out of it, especially now that interest rates are coming down. You know, I can see that.
Yeah, and just weighing in on that as well, Mark. The SBA loan products weren't always available to our industry, you know, probably over the last 20 years. So very few businesses where you can deploy, you know, $1.5 million, leverage, you know, anywhere from $8 to $10 million and get into the game. So it's been fantastic for our owners using SBA loans. Let's see, Sonny just asked, I saw in Inside Self Storage magazine that you do a free analysis of property. How do we go about this? I'll send you some information, Sonny, on that. From Jafer, is $1 million of my own money enough for a reasonable facility in California?
Let me answer that one too, Garrett. A couple of things, you know, a lot of self-storages, we design them in phases. So you don't have to build the whole thing in phases. But the smaller the phase is, the less return you're going to have in that first phase, because you have things like signage, the office, the land, all those expenses has to be expensed in phase one. So sometimes in phase one, you don't make any money, especially in California where everything is so expensive. But the idea is to, when you get to phase two, the site has enough value in it that you don't have to put any more money down or less money down for phase two, because the equity is there because you did the hard work. I'll give you an example. One of our franchisees found a piece of land about 2 years ago and went through the approval process. And he decided, you know, he had to move. He was going to move to the state and sell his other business. So he waited 2 years after he bought that property. He bought the property for 900,000. And then, because it was, when you buy a property, SBA makes you use the price you purchased the property for. Unless you've owned it for 2 years, you can have it reappraised. So he had it reappraised, and it was, what was the number, Garrett? I think it was like 1.7 or
Yeah, it was close to 2 million. Yep.
$2 million. So he paid 800,000 for it, but because he got it approved for self-storage, now all of a sudden it was worth an extra $1 million. So that's how people build phase two sometimes. But Jaffer, it's real close. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say that you're going to want a partner with maybe another million, another 500,000. You're going to be happier, even though you might only own half the site or 60 or 70% if you're the one who finds the land. You know, it's just expense. But there are parts of California, you go up, you know, northeast of some of it, you know, it's much cheaper, but it might be 2 or 3 hours from your home. Near the big cities, you need more than $1 million typically.
Yep. Let's see, Carlin asked another one, and this, we might be able to take this one offline, but we can generally answer now. But what do the exit options look like if a franchisee wants to exit the business facility? I'm assuming sell.
Yeah, that's a franchise question, and what we need to do is get you a copy of our franchise agreement, our franchise disclosure document, so you can read it all. But basically, they can sell their facility to somebody who wants to be a storage authority franchise. It's just like McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts. The big advantage of storage authority compared to Dunkin' Donuts or those guys, the franchisee, you own the land and the business. At McDonald's, you just own the business most of the time. They own the land. At Dunkin' Donuts, you want to sell your business, you can go ahead and sell it, but they own the land. And it gets even worse than that. They own the land, but you built the McDonald's on top of it, but you lose that when you go to sell, and McDonald's gets that. But in this case, you know, what's great about our system is that you own the land and the building. But again, more details, happy to give you. You know, just give Garrett a call.
All right, not seeing any more questions come in. So there's all of our contact there. Definitely appreciate everybody joining. You'll do our best to get this out to you today, and it'll also be in our newsroom or our blog newsroom at storageauthorityfranchise.com. Hopefully you got a couple, you know, good solid pro tips here. Our next webinar will be the second Thursday next month. That falls on April 10th. So looking forward to, you know, everybody joining as well. And again, appreciate everybody's time, and we'll see you soon.